It's time for Tech 24, and for more, I'm joined in the studio now with Charlotte Lamb. And this time, the big question is what's happening with the Metaverse?
That's the big question. Well, Meta has effectively sidelined our Horizon Worlds, and that's the virtual reality world that Mark Zuckerberg bet his company's name and identity on. So let's set the scene. It's 2021, October 2021, and we know that Facebook, the world's dominant social network, doesn't just launch a product, it renames itself Meta. And essentially what happens is Mark Zuckerberg calls his metaverse the next frontier, and Horizon Worlds is this flagship app that was meant to bring his 3D place, this 3D world to life, and where the people were supposed to join as avatars and build virtual hangouts. And here's a quick recap for you.
I believe the Metaverse is the next chapter for the internet, and it's the next chapter for our company too. All right, perfect.
Boy.
Oh, hey, Mark. Hey, what's going on?
Hi, Mark. What's up, Mark?
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. One day, this lecture hall will be made of code. A surgeon will be able to practice as many times as needed in the metaverse. The metaverse may be virtual, but the impact will be real.
So this is an important moment. Virtual reality isn't some obscure hobby anymore.
So, Catherine, Meta pours in tens of millions, roughly $80 billion, across its virtual reality unit, Reality Labs, and this metaverse push. Then there's the celebrity partnerships, the virtual concepts and brand activations, built on this idea that we would strap into these headsets and be transported. But now, nearly 5 years later, Meta has announced that it would remove Horizon Worlds from Quest headsets altogether. It was supposed to disappear from VR by June 15 and live on only as a mobile app. Now, a day later, the Meta's CTO, Chief Technology Officer, he backtracked, posting to Instagram that the worlds would stay in VR for now, for, quote, the foreseeable future, but with minimal support. Now, for a company that was set on building this whole entire new 3D universe, it's not a small change.
Now, Mark Zuckerberg, he renamed the entire company after this vision of his. So why the change and then why the backtrack?
Well, Zuckerberg promised billions rather, in users and in commerce. It never came quite close enough. A tech market intelligence firm, the IDC, found Quest market sales fell 16%. That's year over year from 2024 to 2025. And app figures estimate that even with tens of millions of Horizon mobile downloads, total consumer spending on the app was just $1.1 million. But once Meta announced plans to end Horizon Worlds, there was backlash, and this bulk of it came from users. Those were the ones who were invested in Horizon, the small VR communities, the creators and developers who depend on the platform. For them, shutting VR access felt like they were being abandoned by this universe that they were trying to live in, even if the rest of the world hadn't quite caught on.
And as you were mentioning there, an $80 billion investment. Why didn't it catch on?
Well, analysts and Meta employees, they point to a fundamental mismatch between the technology and user behavior. Critics argue that Meta had built a place to go, but gave people no reason to go there. So social media works well in this day and age because it's plugged into things that we already use and things we were already doing, such as sharing photos, messaging friends, following celebrities. What the metaverse required was something different. It's expensive hardware, sometimes physical discomfort, and essentially taking what people were already doing on mobile phones and asking them to do it somewhere else. Now, a Forrester analyst put it bluntly this week, saying that Meta was trying to solve a consumer problem that didn't quite exist. And you can't build mass social platform reliant on hardware if most of the people don't own that hardware.
When we're talking about such large figures, who is paying the price for these losses? And what does it tell us about Silicon Valley and being held accountable or not?
Essentially, nobody's paying a price, and that's not an accident. So it's a feature of how Meta is actually structured. Zuckerberg controls around 60% of the company's voting power through a dual-class share structure, and he set it up that way so he could make long-term bets without Wall Street pressure. Now, the counter-argument is that he also turned Facebook into a roughly $1 trillion company, and long-term shareholders have made extraordinary returns on the core business. Now, what's interesting is now that Zuckerberg has pivoted aggressively into AI with that same conviction that he had for Meta and developing this universe here. So we're already seeing Meta cut stock-based awards, and it's reworking its funding to spend more on its AI projects. There are reports that it's considering laying off people, roughly around 20% of the company, although for now Meta's saying that is just speculative. But it's really interesting that this all comes at a time that Meta and other big tech companies are competing to outbuild each other, to outbuild these massive data centers in Silicon Valley.
Charlotte, thank you so much for telling us what's happening with the metaverse. And that's it for this edition of Tech 24 with our tech reporter, Charlotte Lamb.